Welcome back to Interview Ninja Step 55. Reviewing our progress, showing the big picture of the journey to become an empowered adult, and describing the 7 phases of developing skills for life. There's a lot in this step, and you need to think carefully about your own purpose and your own journey, because it's not about Corben at all, really. It's about you. And as you listen, you should have in your mind your own position, your own situation, your own goals, and your own strategy, if you have one yet.
Well, the next step really is about conversation and control and the more accurate use of words. So then you're starting to this area called interpersonal dynamics, where you're starting to understand how you react to other people, how other people react to you, and how you can change that dynamic. Generally speaking, schools don't teach that because it would be very hard to control a class that have been empowered in that area. It's much, much easier for them to keep you in the sort of pupil-teacher box.
If I'm honest, I don't think any teachers know how to do that if they wanted to. I don't think most adults grow up, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but with interpersonal dynamic skills.
It's interesting. I think when they go to teacher training college, it's probably covered to some extent, but they're probably also made aware that it's a danger area, and it's the line between being a front of the classroom teacher and perhaps being a counsellor or a mentor, or when children need additional learning, special needs learning, and that becomes much more personally sensitive. So it's conversational control. Then the next step on is understanding your personal power and the limitations of your personal power now and what you can do to increase your personal power. Then it moves on through understanding your creativity and the blocks to your creativity, unblocking your creativity. Because again, schools and universities, they need to keep a controlled environment, so they can't just have people running around. But on the other hand, they do sincerely want to encourage your creativity. It's just the environment in which they're functioning doesn't enable people to, it doesn't give, people don't have the freedom to be creative that they do when they're not in that structured environment and there's 20 or 30 or 50 people there. So that's next step is creativity, and then you come into this area of what's called emotion and understanding emotion, thinking about emotion, thinking about what are the different emotions and how you experience them, how other people experience them, and to some extent how you can control those feelings. And that's a massive part of becoming competent. Then it's understanding motivation. And I'd like, before you go on this trip, maybe even later today, to talk about motivation. And there's a particular theory, there's a triangle called Maslow's triangle of motivation. Yeah. You probably haven't looked at that yet?
I haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't.
Then, and not necessarily here, but earlier on, but certainly at this stage, you need to have developed critical thinking. And you need to be able to think critically and analytically.
Yeah. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah. You need to be also, and this is what I'm looking for by the end of today, is to think strategically. So it's not just a matter of being critical, it's a matter of being strategic, which means having a plan, having a purpose, and knowing how you're going to achieve it. Well, having a plan to how to achieve it, whether you will or not. The next one is integrating thinking with action and becoming action-orientated, because so much of your schooling up till now has just been putting knowledge into a bucket or perhaps building up skills. And you all know with musical instruments and so on, you may well know all the musical chords and this and this and this, but without practice, where again you've been raised to function within a certain comfort zone. So if you're going to take new actions and boldly go, you need to understand how to assess risk and how to balance the risk-reward thing. So you're not foolhardy and stupid, but at the same time, you can grow. So understanding risks. The next very important thing is in understanding failure and motivation and how to learn from failure. Without failure, you probably don't learn. It's hard.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Well,
So, but you've got to learn. You've got to learn to learn. You've got to learn from your mistakes, but also emotionally, you've got to learn how to handle knockbacks. And that's very important. And then finally, you've got to move into this last phase, which is where you become what's called actualized as a personality. So you're actually fulfilling your potential as a person, and you're living pretty much every moment in an authentic and actualized way. So once you've got there, you're in good shape. So again, we'll come back to that.
so simple.
Well, I did it because I want you to know that there is a journey, that you haven't got all the way there. But
I definitely haven't got all the way there, but I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm on like step 2 or 3.
yeah, well, the way this works, the way these conversations work, is I seed thoughts further round those steps. If you do look back, you'll see little seeds, because the nature of seeds is you have to plant them in the right soil and then give them time to grow. That's why so much of the tutorials you get are they're not so much seeds as saying, look, this is what this plant looks like, this is what this plant looks like when it's grown. So the technique I'm using is to seed things, so hopefully they'll
Grow in my head.
Yeah. And that's why I want to do this where are you now type of thing. Okay? Which might be the right time to go over to that, actually. So the exercise I talked about was where's your time and energy gone in this past week in terms of hours and enjoyment. Only record things that you think are worth recording, and then we can revisit them in the context of how meaningful have they been, what's actually happening to yourself at the moment and the time you're spending. And is that great? Are we on track? Or is there anything we can do to make them, what you do, more strategic? So I want you to present to camera.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna leave you for 5.
shall I talk as I do it?
I would like you to talk to the camera as you do it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so I thought
I
it was
would
just
say
fill it
something
out.
on the lines of, on Monday I went to so and so and I did this, and I was with, it's a little bit of 5W2H.
Yeah. I wondered if you just wanted me to write it down and then wait for you and then we talk through it. Or...
I would like you to capture that information.
Yes.
And that's going to be almost the agenda or the context for us to have a bit of a talk through.
About where I'm using my time. Yeah.
Yes, time and energy, and what level of satisfaction you're getting out of it.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
This session has been a bit intense and covered almost too much. It's always the way when talking big picture. It can help to position where are we now, but the student needs several minutes for their subconscious to do a major sort and reframe process. The conscious mind isn't capable of doing that, and some people think that's the purpose of sleep, is where your subconscious mind gets a chance to sort and reframe the experiences that it has seen and filtered during the day. Anyway, I'm going to use the valuable time I have with Corben to introduce a totally different skill area and a few concepts. Unlike the conscious mind, the subconscious can handle hundreds of parallel tasks, and this new stuff will not prevent the sort and reframe process that Corben will need to unpick the big picture and position where he is now on his learning journey.
Now, I've just had one thought before we do it. If we could easily on there and show it, run through a thing called Gestalt CYCLE. Could we do that?
What do you mean?
Well, it's a 4 or 5 minute YouTube thing.
Before we do this?
Yes.
Yes, we absolutely can.
Yeah, I think that'd give you a bit more of a shape for doing this.
Okay, sure. Well, then let's...
Right, let's do it.
In step 56 of this Interview Ninja course, we're going to talk more about Gestalt, which is a way of thinking that helps a person to position themselves within a big picture of the situation they find themselves in. Sometimes it's referred to as thinking in the here and now. You may like to do first a bit of research on it, but do tread carefully. Avoid the philosophy aspects, existentialism, as it's for people basically with time to waste. Also, Gestalt as a psychotherapy or talking cure is mostly for people who are mentally unwell and need to be helped to get to be okay. We can use it to increase awareness of our own real world, plus manage our own personal change by understanding Gestalt generally, but very specifically mental blocks. So by understanding the Gestalt cycle, we can use that to develop soft skills.